Hi, I'm Michelle Begue with a look at what's happening in Latin America now. But first, our news trivia.
Which Latin American countries engaged in a border dispute will face another ruling next week by the International Court of Justice? We'll have the answer later. Guatemala is in election limbo. A tribunal said this week they'll review the outcome of the first round of voting in the presidential election held in June. The tribunal claims there are 1,000 polling stations out of 122,000 that are experiencing possible interference. The Supreme Electoral Tribunal has been ordered to suspend the results. Each precinct has 5 days to compare the total number of votes from each polling station to preliminary counts. If necessary, they'll order a ballot-by-ballot recount. The situation has resulted in protests from citizens. As of now, 2 Social Democrats, Sandra Torres and Bernardo Arevalo, will face off in the second round of voting held in August. In Mexico, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is celebrating 5 years since his election victory. Tens of thousands of supporters attended an event in Mexico City's Zócalo Square, which can hold more than 100,000 people. In his speech, López Obrador spoke of his fight against corruption and measured government spending. He also highlighted key infrastructure projects such as the Maya train. He said his government plans to be self-sufficient when it comes to fuel and plans to stop imports of it next year. Next, López Obrador's political party Morena plans to pick a successor for the presidential race next year. There will be a series of polls to see who voters prefer.
Now let's go to my colleague Joel Richards, who has a special report.
Historically, Argentines have taken economic refuge in the US dollar. Inflation and frequent devaluation of the Argentine peso are the main reasons behind this. But now, Argentines are able to save in yuan. The central bank issued a statement confirming that Argentines may now open bank accounts in the Chinese currency. And this is just one more example of the shift towards greater use of renminbi in Latin America's third largest economy. Just days ago, Argentina made a loan repayment to the IMF to the value of nearly $3 billion, partly using yuan. This is from the currency swap Buenos Aires agreed with Beijing in early June. And this all comes on top of April's announcement that Argentine companies will now use renminbi to pay for all imports from China. Now, Beijing has great interest in wider use of its currency in international trade. And for Buenos Aires, the upside is that the country's depleted foreign reserves have greater protection. Argentina's economy is suffering the effects of a major drought. And using the yuan for trade with its second largest trade partner eases pressure on the central bank's dollar reserves. This is all taking place in the wider global context of de-dollarization, as many countries around the world look to diversify the currency they trade in.
In Brazil, the highest electoral court has barred former President Jair Bolsonaro from running for office until 2030. The ruling comes after 5 out of 7 judges found him guilty of abusing power and misusing public media during last year's election. Bolsonaro denies any wrongdoing. He says he will appeal the court's ruling.
Now let's check out the stories we're following for next week.
We're following the investigation of a deadly accident in Colombia. 2 aircrafts from the Colombian Air Force crashed during a training exercise for the country's Independence Day parade on July 20th. 1 lieutenant died in the incident, and the other officer operating the second aircraft is in the hospital after making an emergency landing. Lieutenant Colonel Mario Andrés Espinosa lost his life after 18 years of service. And now the answer to our news trivia. The answer is B. The maritime border between Colombia and Nicaragua in the Caribbean Sea has been the subject of dispute. The International Court of Justice is hosting the Latin American countries for the 13th time to settle their boundary issues. In 2012, the ICJ gave Colombia control of several strategic islands, including the San Andrés archipelago, but gave the water surrounding the islands to Nicaragua. The next ruling on the case concerning delimitation of the continental shelf between Nicaragua and Colombia will occur on July 13th.
And that's it for this week. We'll see you again soon on Latin America Now.